This is the preview to the February devotionals. It's titled Overcoming Obstacles. What are the impossibilities, hindrances, and problems preventing you from taking hold of the promises God has given you? What are the obstacles hindering you from receiving the answers to your prayers, the things you desperately need, and the total victory God has provided for you? God has shown me 7 major obstacles which block the fulfillment of God's promises and provision for your life. These obstacles are barriers or walls that are standing in your way, hindering you from taking possession of God's promises, just as the walls of Jericho prevented Israel from taking their land. Like the children of Israel who marched around the Jericho walls 7 times, God has directed me during the next few months to lead you in 7 marches around 7 major walls in your life. Day by day, we are going to identify these 7 obstacles, the walls which block you from receiving the fulfillment of God's promises and walking in the total victory He has planned for you. Then, using the strategies God has given us, we are going to see these walls come down in Jesus' name. The 7 major obstacles God has shown me that are holding you back from taking the victories you need are like the massive walls of Jericho, separating the Israelites from taking possession of the promised land. These walls separated the children of Israel from the fulfillment of God's promises. They were a formidable barrier which stood between them and their promised land. Behind Israel was the Jordan River and 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. Before them was Jericho, the first major stronghold they must conquer before taking possession of their land. Jericho was a strong, fortified city with 2 massive walls surrounding it. The outer wall was 6 feet thick, and the inner wall was 12 feet thick. Both walls were 30 feet high, 15 feet apart, and connected together with houses built across them. The total combined distance across the 2 walls was 33 feet. These walls formed a formidable barrier. In the natural, they were impossible to penetrate. Joshua and the children of Israel did not have the weapons nor military might to tear them down, and there was absolutely no possible way for them to break through the walls. God directed Israel to march around the walls of Jericho once a day for 6 days. The warriors, armed for battle, were to go before the Ark of the Covenant. 7 priests marched in front of the Ark, sounding 7 trumpets. During this time, they were commanded not to speak a word. No sound was to be heard besides the trumpets. The Ark of the Covenant was the central focus of this entire procession. The outcome of the battle was dependent upon one thing. The God of battles was with them. Without His presence and divine intervention, there could be no victory. The Ark was the place where God's manifested presence dwelt above the mercy seat. God wanted the people to know it was His divine presence in their midst that would make them victorious. On the 7th day, the people were to march around the city 7 times. On the 7th time around, the priests were to sound a long, loud blast of the trumpet. When the people heard this signal, they were to shout, and the Lord promised that when they did this, the walls would fall down. The walls of Jericho collapsed exactly as God promised because Joshua and the children of Israel acted upon the strategy that God gave them. During the next few months, you will learn strategies that will break down every wall in your life. As we begin this march, if you act upon each God-given strategy that you learn, the Jericho walls in your life will fall. Get ready to see your walls of impossibilities come crashing down. Get ready to see the walls hindering you from taking hold of the fulfillment of the promises God has given you crumble. Get ready to see the walls blocking you from receiving the answers you need from God broken down. This month, we are marching against the walls of fear, unbelief, and confusion. In the next few months, we will march against disobedience and unforgiveness. We will also learn how to win the battle for the mind and the tongue. Are you ready for our supernatural march? Then put on your spiritual boots and let's get going.